Is a second Trump term a climate catastrophe in the making? From his unapologetic comments, "I don't believe it," "Climate change is a hoax," "I don't think science knows," to "burn baby burn," we won't be finding him rolling around in the grass with a daisy anytime soon. Hey, I'm Greg, and join me as I delve into climate-related topics beyond the extreme weather events with experts from around the world discussing how these issues impact us all. And while you're here, please be sure to hit the subscribe button, to ring that bell icon for future episodes, and also give the video a thumbs up as it helps spread the word. Our guest today is Dario Fazzi, an environmental history expert, author and professor at Leiden University and the Roosevelt Institute for American Studies in Middleburg here in the Netherlands. He joins us to shed light on the intersection of US history, politics and the environment. Welcome to the channel. Dario, welcome, and thanks for joining me for the first episode of this new series, Talking Climate Today.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for inviting me. Thanks a lot for having me here. It's my pleasure.
You're welcome. Let's jump straight into it. It's an incredibly interesting time for US politics, and as Trump is building up this momentum for a second term in the Oval Office, what does his first term tell us about his potential intentions for environmental and climate policies?
Well, this is a very interesting, topical and timely question to address. In order to reply to this question, we need to understand not only what Trump did, but the kind of things that Trump represents for what concerns the overall relationship between the United States, modern, contemporary America, and the environment. Now, to reply to your questions, what did Trump do in his first term in office for what concerns the environment? An overall assessment cannot be positive. He actively dismantled many of the provisions, many of the legislation that was supposed to minimize or at least trying to reduce the overall impact that the United States as a country, as an industrial machinery, as a people, as a nation in general, has been having on the global environment. According to some estimates, Trump's administration made roughly 100 pieces of legislation about the environment and environmental protection ineffective, and this range from regulations that take care of water's quality to the quality of the air to issuing permits for drilling or for mining more fossil fuels like coal. Trump's actions, Trump's scandals, Trump's political inefficiency for what concerns environmental legislations has had an impact on the American environment, but more broadly on the planetary systems. The United States has went back producing a lot of greenhouse gases. CO2 levels have been spiking again. The withdrawal from the Paris Agreement, which is perhaps the most important and also the best known anti-environmentalist action that has been put forward by Trump's administration, has contributed to warming up the planet a little bit more. So we cannot be optimistic. If a candidate like that has this kind of record for what concerns environmentalist legislations and approaches to the environment will go back to the White House, we cannot expect anything but continuity, also considering the kind of emphasis he's placing on traditional ways of producing energy in the United States that is related to fossil fuels or natural gas. Having said having highlighted the kind of negative impact that Trump has had on the environment and that we can expect him to have in a second term of the environment, the issue is a little bit more complex. Again, we should take into consideration the overall impact that the United States has been having on the environment and will very likely continue to have on the environment, whoever is going to be the next president. There are some structural issues to be taken into consideration there, and then there are possible avenues that, depending on who is going to be the president, the country can take. We can talk about this during our conversation.
Yeah, you mentioned that a candidate like Trump, with his approach to the environment in his first term, we can't really be that optimistic. And, we did see that his actions did increase CO2 emissions and in the US, which is an interesting point to raise because, people don't realize that historically the US is the biggest emitter of CO2 gas emissions, and that's only been surpassed on an annual basis by China in recent years. And these emissions, of course, are not only bad for the US, but, they also have and hurt our global emission targets. And that said, what specific policies might Trump try and prioritize in a second term?
Okay, well, this is interesting, especially due to the ways in which you introduced this question, because it is true the United States has been historically, I don't know if everybody knows about this, but it's been historically one of the most important contributors to greenhouse emissions in this planet. Now, scholars defined the period from 1945 onward as a very important stage of this Anthropocene era, so of this era in which human impact has been completely reshuffling the geobiochemical cycles that put the Earth together. This particular stage from 1945, let's say, onward, has been defined as the Great Acceleration, a period of time in which all the indicators, all the markers of the Anthropocene era have been going up at an unprecedented rate and at an unprecedented pace and speed. And most of this acceleration is related to the ways in which the United States has been driving this latest modernization. One of the main factors in this is, for instance, America's industrial capitalism, the application of industrialization across the board, from mechanized agriculture to mass production and consumption. This has had a huge impact on the global systems. Think about the use of fertilizers, for instance, or the overwhelming presence and influence of petrochemical industries and byproducts. These have had an impact on our planet. And there's more than that, just like the surface, the materiality of it. There's also the ideological approach to the environment, because this kind of model of development has been mostly technologically driven. The United States has been putting a lot of confidence and trust in technological innovation, preferring the technological principle over other principles, like the principle of precaution, for instance. The idea that first you need to test the technology to see whether or not it has a negative impact on the environment before applying it. Well, the United States has been following another idea of progress and development that has been largely successfully applied all over the world. Successfully, of course, from a capitalistic point of view, but from the point of view of the environment, we are now seeing what are the costs and consequences of this. Add to this the overwhelming influence of military industrial complexes and apparatuses that have had a huge impact again on the geobiochemical cycles of the Earth. You also need to understand that the attitude toward the environment that the United States is embedded within is an attitude that is largely exploitative. It has always been like that. The nation has been constructed, built upon this idea of unbounded, unlimited national resources that were at the disposal of settlers back then and 250 years ago, and people who were living in the United States now. It's the idea of the frontier, of constantly disposable frontiers that have been available for the United States.
Which is actually an interesting point, because we look at central US with agriculture and farming, which is now just dust bowls, where it's impossible to actually grow anything, and the way that impacts their weather there and the livelihoods of the people in those areas.
Yeah, there's been, again, a constant attitude that has been utilitarian, the idea that the environment and natural resources are there for the exploitation of political or societal systems. And this has had in the United States also a very interesting translation into actual societal relations in phenomena that have been largely connected to environmental justice issues. So this uneven socio-ecological development, the degradation of the natural environment that the United States is built upon, has not been even. It's been exposing some communities more than others, and usually these communities are always the communities of color, the communities that are characterized by the poorest people or the most marginalized groups. So all of this is structural in the United States. In order to change this, really, you need a complete subversion of the cultural, political mindset. It's something that goes beyond the previous president or the next one. But within this structure, there is now a certain kind of novelty, an element of novelty that is represented by the awareness of the threat, of the actual moment, of the urgency of the crisis we live in. Numbers and science and studies are telling us that we are reaching and perhaps have been already overcoming some of the most important tipping points for what concerns climate threats, right?
7 of them last year. Yeah.
Exactly. Now, that is exactly the point, the moment in which Democrats and Republicans start diverging and do not agree anymore. The idea of the Anthropocene. Are we really, as human beings, modifying the ways in which the planet works? Well, Democrats may tend to reply positively to this question, saying yes, and perhaps we need to do something in order to mitigate our impact, perhaps to reverse the course of our actions. Republicans deny that this exists, especially, the bulk of the Trump base is completely against the idea that any such a thing as anthropogenic transformation or climate change exists. We've been developing in this way, we'll continue to develop our world, our societies in this way. So drill, baby, drill, fine. Or let's keep using coal because coal is clean, because coal has been always allowing us to develop in this way. That's the moment, the point in which the two start not to communicate anymore. And there is where you can expect some political differences, but also differences in terms of policies. And going back to your questions, which kind of policies can we expect from Trump's administration, are all the policies that are consequential to this mindset, So you won't have any kind of move, you cannot expect any kind of move that can make sure that the United States impact less on the environment, and it will be actually a new 2016 where the United States will keep investing, especially in fossil fuels. Also because of the contingency, because of the particular moment of crisis we are living now. But again, this is perhaps matter for the continuation of our conversation.
Yeah, so you raise a few interesting things there. How the US is driving this latest modernization, such as industrial capitalism, and the impact that this technologically driven model has had been successfully implemented, across the world. You also mentioned about the exploitive nature and attitude of the US and its impact on marginalized groups, and the need for a complete subversion of the culture and political mindset, to quote your words. But with these two camps of opinions forming in the US, from those who understand what's going on with the environment and want to make changes, to those whom are on the Trump, let's just business as usual. What challenges might Trump face when trying to implement his non-environmentally friendly policies?
Well, there will be challenges and opportunities on both the cases. Whether or not Trump gets elected or whether it's Biden who gets elected, the new presidents will be facing a series of political, strategic, global challenges that will determine also to a large extent their own approach toward environmental issues. There are some variables, in other words, upon which the new environmental policy of the United States will depend whoever is going to be the president, so not only Trump. One, perhaps the most evident, the most the clearest of these variables is represented by war and instability at the international level. for many reasons. I would like to highlight perhaps two of them here. War is not neutral in environmental terms, and especially if the United States will keep acting as the arsenal of democracy, right? So keeping producing warfare instruments and investing in an ever-expanding arsenal that might be used in Ukraine or in other scenario to defend NATO or to defend Europe from Russia's aggression, that may be used in order to prevent some actions on the part of China, or maybe used in order to protect the allies in Middle East. These investments will have a cost, will have an environmental cost. Producing machineries, guns, ammunitions, investing. Now, I was talking to some friends. I've been to the United States a few weeks ago, and former officers of the Department of Energy were telling me that in the United States, the production of plutonium has been resumed. Uranium mining has been resumed because after years of reductions of strategic nuclear armaments, the United States are now catching up with the new national security threats, or at least threats that are perceived as involving national security. And this means, again, rearmament, not only conventional rearmament, but also nuclear one, which is extremely dangerous, and it entails cost for the public health and the environmental health of the country to a large extent, to an extent that historians are now uncovering, because you see all the damages that uranium mining has been creating for generations and generations to those communities where uranium was mined, has been mined, most importantly, the Navajo people in the Four Corners area. But there are places that are like sacrificed zones and that are sacrificed in order to guarantee the expansion of America's military-industrial apparatus. Therefore, military investment will surely be an important variable in any kind of projection that we do about the future impact that the United States will have on the environment. And this does not really depend on the kind of presidents we are going to have in the White House. It's more like how the United States want to keep projecting its power abroad. The other thing connected to the international instability is that, and we may tend to forget this, and this is also related to that legacy you were mentioning, given the rising threat, especially in Europe, of Russia and the decline of availability of Russian gas, we in Europe started relying and are now more and more reliant on American shale gas, which has boomed in terms of production during Obama, has been supported as a business. The expansion of this business has been supported during Obama's years. And the boom of shale gas in the United States supported the economic growth of the United States, keeping unemployment levels very low, controlling inflation, and guaranteeing a line of supply and also of money, given the rising exports of gas to Europe. Now, the gas industry is a fossil fuel industry, is an industry that has a huge impact on the environment. Shale gas and fracking contaminate groundwater, expose communities to environmental degradation, and so the availability of other sources of energy, the investment in green energy also in other parts of the world will determine how the United States will rely more or less to this source of energy and to this source of revenues. These variables, again, will be there on the table of the future president anyhow. We can think that maybe Biden will try to negotiate some diplomatic agreements and will try to limit the investment in the arsenal of democracy, in war machinery in the United States. But at the moment, we don't know how the situation will develop. We have to take this into consideration, though, that whoever is going to be the president, these variables and other kinds of variables may play a huge role in determining, how the United States will position itself in relation to the environment. What are the constraints? to this variable. So how can, what can limit Trump's action, as you asked? One of the things, well, there are exogenous and endogenous constraints. An exogenous one could be an economic crisis, for instance, the necessity perhaps to reduce investment in certain particular crucial sectors. But an endogenous crisis could be the rising awareness of civil society that has been representing a constraint to the actions of the United States historically in many times, on many occasions. Civic society, so a well-informed and aware public opinion can play a role in determining how the United States, positions itself and the policies of the United States. This has happened since the 70s onward. It has happened, on certain particular occasions for particular reasons and in particular under particular opportunities, like for instance the Montreal Protocol in the 80s that banned the use of CFC in order to protect the ozone layer. We may witness the rise of a broader and broader aware public opinion that eventually will affect the policy decisions of the new administration. But it's an investment in the long term, because in order to have an aware public opinion, you really need to invest on education, on dialogue, on tools of environmental democracy, which at the moment seem a little bit foreign to the political landscape in the United States.
Yeah, so it's really clear that, regardless of who the next president may be, they're going to be facing, many challenges here. And I really appreciate the point that you made about US's role in the war, and that war is never neutral regarding the environment, not to mention public health. And we have seen and know about the US military budget being increased significantly. And of course, there's the growth of US gas, which is particularly interesting to us here in the Netherlands, as we only know two other consequences of fracking, and it's now being banned here in the Netherlands just in recent years, which is kind of really interesting given the fact that we're now importing this US gas, which is not only an environmental nightmare in the US, but it also, imposes many environmental threats and to the Netherlands, and is suspected of being linked to marine biodiversity loss or strange behavior amongst marine life in the particular areas where this gas is coming in. You also bring up, the potential challenge for Trump being the raising of awareness of civil society, which, is a great point to expand a little bit on, because I find it very interesting that many people still believe that we can't do anything. Yet, the examples that you've given all throughout history, we're really seeing that, through the awareness of civil society and people coming together and standing together and speaking together as one, that change really can happen. Given all of that, just to wrap up this conversation, how might Trump's potential second term impact global climate efforts? And I'm referring also to the fact that, should he act as we may suspect him to act, what message really does that send to the rest of the world? How could his actions influence other countries' climate action?
Well, I may give a reply to this question that is perhaps the reply of a historian, so somebody who's been analyzing the role that the United States has played in the world in contemporary global affairs, assuming that this is more or less what's going to happen under Trump too. It may not be the case, because historians are famously notorious for not being good at doing any kind of prediction. But if I have to consider a potential second Trump's term within a broader, again, historical development, then I see that any kind of positive steps, toward the protection of the environment, let's call it this way, which can mean, the implementation of domestic sound environmental legislation, or the achievement of an international intergovernmental regulation of the environment and environmental resources, for the safeguard of the environment or environmental resources, in order to achieve this goal. So like broader international consensus on certain kind of environmental issues as it has been in the past, because this again in the past happened a few times, you really need the United States to play a role of leadership. So to take the lead in this. This is the experience, this is what the experience tells us, that all the most effective environmental regulations that have been implemented and activated at the international level have had the backup of the United States. And you see this in negative terms too, as in all the most ineffective pieces of legislation that have been implemented at the international level have not worked because the United States has stepped back from supporting it, like for instance the Basel Convention on the transboundary trade of waste, of hazardous waste, okay? So the United States is a crucial actor for any sort of intergovernmental and international environmental diplomacy or environmental regulation to happen. If a second Trump's term will mean a withdrawal from this level of engagement and from this leadership, we're going to have a problem. We go into an uncharted terrain in which the leadership may be taken by other countries, I don't know, like the European Union or single countries or China or I don't know, or Middle East, maybe former oil-relying countries will start, creating a cartel defending the implementation of solar power all over the world. I don't know. I really don't know. It's really uncharted terrain. What I know, and I can notice as a historian, is that when the United States has been playing that role, the role of, scholars call it the liberal leviathan, so the provider of order, stability that has this, whose role also produces this kind of beneficial consequences, with a lot of problems too, I'm not denying that, then we achieve some goals. If we are gonna witness, once again, American isolationism or retreat from the international engagement with Trump again, then it may be more and more difficult to achieve any sort of agreement, because there will be a natural stimulus or a natural inclination, if you want, to not perform that role, bandwagon on some other investments and engagements, or just, not doing enough to cope with the threat and challenges that should actually be existential and shouldn't only rely on the willingness of an elected man on the other side of the Atlantic.
Yep. Dario, thank you very much for your time.
Thank
you. I really
you,
appreciate it. That was really insightful and informative. And I hope that you can join us again.
Yeah, surely. Thanks a lot, and good luck with this project. Have fun. Keep having fun.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Cheers. So Dario really brought a richness to filling in the context to answer today's question by provoking many more questions of my own, from the legacy of Obama's presidency to the US positioning of itself in the world, to its oil, to its culture, to driving industrial capitalism, and the overall impact the US has and influence in the world. And I'm sure it sparked many questions of your own, so please do drop them in the comment box below. I would love to invite Dario back to do a follow-up video using your questions. And again, if you have not done so already, then please do give this video a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel and click on that bell for future updates. Until next time, it's bye from me for now.